Today we're going to talk about the 5 lessons we learned on our second house flip ever. If you're new to the channel, I'm Ariane and this is my better half, Chris. We are actually creating this series on how we retired at the age of 27, and you see our step-by-step journey. This is now part 6, and if you watched the previous video, you'll see that our very first flip turned out okay, and our second house flip was a disaster. So you'll hear about the disaster that happened on this one and all the lessons we learned, and it actually helped us a lot. From this, we actually ended up wholesaling and flipping over 500 houses over the next 5 years. So we had a lot of very important lessons that actually helped shape our business so we can take on over 500 wholesales and flips over the next few years. So you definitely do not want to miss all the lessons here. So Chris is going to tell us about the very first lesson.
Yep, so very first lesson is don't blindly trust contractors. On our first flip, we went into it with rosy eyes. We thought we were going to do a lot of the work and save a lot of money, which, if you listen to the last video, cost us some extra. But in this one, we're like, okay, we're going to do this right this time. We've learned lessons from before. This time, we're going to hire contractors.
So in the last one, we hired subs, right?
Yes.
We hired someone to do the flooring and someone to do the painting.
After we learned the lesson.
Right.
Yes.
But this one, the main difference was...
we hired a general contractor. So from our point of view, we thought, oh, this is going to be turnkey. We're going to give him the keys and the plan. He's going to do all the work, give it back to us, we make money. Sounded very simple, very straightforward. And we trusted him. We had a lot of fun. He actually came from as a referral, had a lot of faith in this. Our first time working with a general contractor. These guys are supposed to be professional. So when he told us that, oh, hey, we need to put a 50% deposit down to get this work started, 50% of our, how much was the budget on this property? It was big.
Like $80,000?
Something like that. So we put, let's say it was 80,000. So we put 40 grand into an escrow account, which was just a bank account that had him on it. So it wasn't really an escrow account, even though he said it was. And we didn't know better at the time to check. But yeah, so when he said that, we believed him. So we did. We put $40,000, let's say, into a bank account that the contractor had 100% access to, and we expected that to go well. And the lesson we learned here is that it didn't go well. And he started running out of money, and they kept asking for more, and the quality of the work wasn't there, but he's got our money already, so how do we get it back? Any money that you give a contractor up front, you have to be willing to walk away from. It's as good as gone.
Right. The contractors are typically good with their hands. They're typically not very good with money or business. Because if you think about it, if they've been doing it for a while, they do make a lot of money. You can kind of like, calculate how much they make. And if they're still doing it after 7 years, they probably just spent it all, right? Like, they're not very good at money. And it happened, there's a whole lot of robbing Peter to pay Paul that happens. And they don't do it intentionally. Again, they're just really bad at money. So they're going to use the money you give them to finish the last job. And if you're the person who was at the end of that kind of nice little Ponzi scheme, well, you don't have any money for your job.
Yeah. And again, this is a generalization. There are good contractors, but it's a numbers game. And the vast majority of them have this issue where they got into this business because they're good at something. They're good at carpentry. They're good at flooring. They're good at something, right? And it's like a technician versus an owner. They have different skill sets, which is not bad, but they get into trouble. They get into a lot of cash flow business issues because they're not business people.
Right. So a good actionable step is for you to actually control the finances. And the first path to doing that is having a clearly defined scope of work. And all this really means is you want to define all the things you want to happen to the property that you are renovating, right? So one of the mistakes we did was we just called the general contractor and said, hey, give us a bid for this house. This is kind of what we want. We want to make it nice and pretty. And then they gave us this $80,000 bulk bid, and that was it. And we were like, okay, you're the expert. How am I supposed to know what I'm supposed to do? It is one of the reasons why we got the short end of the stick and we became the Peter, Paul.
We were Peter, who was used to pay Paul.
Yeah, yes. Yeah. We were the Peter who were used to pay Paul, right? Anyway, so for you, create a scope of work. So ideally, after we went through all those headaches, now we know that what we should have done is created that scope of work, right? Like how much of that $80,000 is supposed to be for painting, and how much was flooring, how much was cabinets.
How much of that was materials versus labor on each of those line items.
Right. And what we should have done is we should have seen that, oh, okay, for the first week, you're only going to do demolition, right? Well, how much do you need to start on demolition? Maybe the whole demolition expense was $3,000. Maybe they need a few dumpsters and they have to order the dumpsters before they can even start. So we should have just agreed to pay the deposit to order the dumpsters instead of paying $40,000, right? We're not even past demolition yet, right? Yeah. And then after demolition, next typically is painting. So we could have paid the deposit for the materials for painting, and then after they painted, we could pay them the rest, and then so on and so forth. So instead of paying that whole big $40,000 and losing it, essentially, we could have just risked a small amount of money, maybe $1,000, $2,000 at a time, and that would help them budget too, because they don't just have this random $40,000 check, random $40,000 in cash sitting in their bank account that they can spend on whatever other job that they need to finish.
And what makes this actually work, like what gets around the contractor pushback, because almost every contractor is going to push back on this idea, is you have to be very quick and prompt on paying them for work complete. So we give them that little deposit up front, let's say for demo, right, where the upfront cost is the cost to rent the dumpsters. Once they have that and they complete the demo, that week they get a check for everything that they've completed for that week. So they don't have to worry about this cash flow. They're not floating our expenses. We're catching them up every single week for the work that is 100% completed for that week, and we do it like clockwork, and our contractors get used to that. And it makes that whole system very clean, very efficient, very transparent. All right, so that brings us to lesson number 2, which is don't over-rehab the property. One of the things that we didn't have our scope of work, we just said make it nice. Contractor came in with, all right, nice is big open floor plan, everything gutted, we're gonna do new flooring, really, really nice custom cabinets, really nice granite, whole 9 yards. And the house actually did look beautiful. Like when we were finally done, it was great. But the comps are king, right? The comps are the target. Every other house in that neighborhood, when we pulled comps, was not an open floor plan. It did not have the nicest custom cabinets with granite. It did not have all of these things that we did, and that means that our property would have sold without those things. So instead of our $80,000 budget, we probably could have gotten away with a $40,000 budget and made just as much money in half the time with a lot less stress, a lot less surprises. So really, the lesson here is do not over-rehab the property. The comps are your target. That property sold. If that property sold for the price you're looking for and it didn't have granite countertops, you don't need granite countertops. If it didn't have an open floor plan, you don't need an open floor plan. Comps are king.
Right, and I think this is something people struggle a lot, especially when they first start renovating anything, whether it's a rental or whether it's a flip or a vacation rental property. Sometimes you want to make it your dream home, right? Maybe you want an open floor plan. Well, it might cost an extra $20,000, right? Is it really worth it? A lot of times not, and then it's not only the amount of money that it costs, it's also the amount of time. It might be $20,000 and 8 extra weeks. That's a lot of time. So I know, like, you might want to make it a certain way because you want it personally. If you were going to live there or use that house yourself, that's what you want. But this is something that you're selling. So you don't have to make it your dream home because it's technically someone else's home. They might actually prefer not having an open floor plan, right? Like, you don't know. And we've actually had flips before where we did so much and then they ripped it all out, right? Mm-hmm. We spent $40,000 on a rehab and then they ripped it all out.
And they rehabbed it again, right?
All their new stuff. So yeah, like, don't over rehab because they might just rip it all out anyway.
Yeah, so this is not a place that you're making for your home. This is a place you're making to sell, so it makes sense to match what else has sold.
So then we're at lesson number 3. Don't let your emotions cloud your judgment. And this is true for a lot of things in life, but definitely for business. So one of the things that happened after we got through the horrible issue we had with the contractor. Like that took probably 6 months just to finish the renovation.
Oh, we kind of skipped that. They weren't doing a good job when we had to try and struggle to claw back the money. They kind of had us hostage. So like the situation was extremely stressful, but we did eventually get it to the finish line.
Right. So it took 6 months of, we had to bring in some new contractor as well, because by the time they got the money, you know, like they didn't have extra money to work, so we actually had someone else work to finish it. But anyway, after we finally finished, which was great, now what happened was we started accepting offers, right? So we started showing the property, we were getting offers, we finally did accept one. And this was back in 2016, right? The real estate market wasn't nearly as hot as it is now. So the buyers and their realtor were very demanding and kind of very
rude. Yeah.
They were very rude about it, right? Like it's okay to ask, hey, can you fix this? But like they would ask it in a very rude, condescending, like,
how could you miss this?
I know.
Like they were really like aggressive and rude.
Yeah. So we were doing the things they asked, but at some point it was just like too much, and we were like, you know what? We gave you 90% of what you want, and you're still asking for the moon after this. We said, well, I was the realtor, right? So I was our realtor representing us. I ultimately said, you know what? Let's just move on to the next buyer.
And so just to put some clarity, we did have backup offers, right? So there were other offers on the table. So we knew if we walked away from this, we thought we could sell it to the next person, no problem. So let's out of principle, because these people are just bad people, let's just move on.
Right.
Which is a bad idea.
And so we did. Now in hindsight, the next buyer, and Chris will talk about it more, the next buyer was nicer, but they couldn't close nearly as fast as the first buyer. So Chris will talk more about that. But we learned that no matter how rude the other parties are, you need to do what's best for the business, what's best for your situation, even if it's gritting your teeth another day or two or week or month, whatever it is. Don't let your pride and your emotions get in the way of actually getting to your goal.
Right. All right. We have to make the best business decision despite what our emotions tell us not to do. Right. Which is hard. It's very hard. So this brings us to our last lesson, which is about accepting the offers. The best offer, the offer that we should accept, is the offer that has the best chance of closing for the highest amount. So if you have two offers that have an equal chance of closing, the better offer is the higher offer. But if one offer has a very low chance of closing, but they're offering the moon, and you have another offer that's reasonable and they will close, the better offer is probably the offer that you know will close, instead of gambling on this higher offer that may not get to the finish line. In the recent market, we've seen this with appraisals, right? People offer way above appraisal, it doesn't appraise, and they ask you to come back down to what the appraisal amount was. You thought you accepted the highest offer, but they couldn't take it to the finish line. Our particular story. After we made the poor decision of walking away from the offer that we, in hindsight, do believe would have closed if we had checked the last, 4 trivial boxes they were asking for, we went on to the next buyer who, props to their realtor, did a really great job. They sent us a nice little letter that said, hey, these are hardworking Americans. They're going to close. They just can't qualify right now because they're 1099s and seasonal, right? So in 6 months, their seasonal income is going to show that they qualify, and their loan officer said they were going to qualify, and everybody was, okay, we're going to let them move in ahead of time before they buy the property as a renter, knowing that, or thinking that, within 6 months, they would now qualify to buy the loan, to buy the property. They didn't.
I'm gonna lose my freaking mind! So
1 year, we had a tenant for 1 year paying less than what we could have rented this to for someone else because we weren't expecting to go that long. This was it was almost like a rent-to-own kind of deal where they thought they owned the house, we thought they owned the house, we were just waiting for the process. But in the end, they couldn't close. So we had to find another buyer after this. And we've dragged this investment off for more than a year now. It was a big mistake to let someone move into a property. If they can't qualify now, the odds of them qualifying later are not likely. And that's for every offer. The cleaner the offer, the stronger the offer.
Right. And that lesson actually extends to a lot of different things, right? So the more certain the thing is, there's actually value to the certainty or the reduced risk. Like what's happening right now in the markets, like we're in a very turbulent market. A lot of us and you probably invested in some investments in the crypto world and all of that. And just like the offer we accepted that was higher but had more risk, a lot of times we are a lot of times we are enticed into investing in something that has a higher potential return, but the risk is much higher. So make sure you are aware of that too. Just because something sounds like you're going to make more money doesn't mean you actually will.
It matters what gets to the finish line, not what's promised.
Right. So anyway, after we did this whole over a year long fiasco of having the worst contractor drama and the worst first buyer drama and then second buyer drama, we finally closed with the third buyer, which is amazing. After all was said and done, we technically broke even.
If you don't count our time.
Right. We were supposed to make somewhere in the $75,000 range on profit. Well, the renovation went significantly over, and I think we originally thought we were going to spend $40,000-$50,000. It became $80,000 and actually more, right? And then we also spent so much time in interest payments over that year plus that we broke even at best. And if we actually looked at all of our expenses, we lost a significant amount of money and time. The last lesson here is to always pay your investors, even if you lose money. So on this deal, we broke even / lost money, depending on how you look at it, but we paid our investors all of their money back, plus the interest they were owed for the time we had their money working on this property for over a year. So they were happy with the double-digit returns. We lost money, but that integrity that our investors know that even if we lose money, they're going to be made whole, and not just made whole as far as their principal investment, they're still making their actual projected returns, what they were promised to make. That means the world to investors, and we're investors as well. We want to see that with the people that we invest with, and that's actually very rare. A lot of times that doesn't actually happen. So if you are one of the people who has your integrity and puts your investors' money above your own, you will have a lot of loyal investors, and you will have lots more business to do later on. Like, again, this was our very second flip. We ended up doing 200 more over the next few years.
And those same investors ended up investing again. So the quirk there is, right, yes, we're losing money on paper, but we're maintaining a valuable relationship. We're maintaining a future lender, right? So as long as you do what you say you're going to do, and you do right by your investors, they actually respect you more for doing right when things go wrong, because everybody's doing well. Like when the whole market's doing well and everybody's making money, everybody's happy, and as soon as something goes wrong, if the cards fall, those guys aren't investing with you ever again, right? They actually respect you more for how you behave when things don't go well than they do when everything's rainbows and sunshine.
So hopefully you learned from one of our disaster properties. There was a lot of pain there, and as you heard, this stretched out over more than a year. So the stress from this transaction spread out over a year.
We didn't even count therapy or medical bills.
I know, we're going to talk about that on the next video. So make sure you click that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, click that like button if you liked it, and so you can see the next video, and we're going to talk more about this journey on how we started out. I was a broke immigrant. Chris was a broke college student when we started out, and then we retired at the age of 27. We actually now co-own over 2,400 rental properties with partner investors. So you'll get to see how we actually did that step by step in this series. So we will see you at the next video.